Oh, welcome to another Skipper Scott Computers for Boats video. So this video is about what is Linux and why do I use it on my boat. So long story short, Linux runs better than any other operating system out there on a small amount of hardware. And operating systems are what you put on your hardware so that you can put applications like spreadsheets and web browsers and things like that. Another example of an operating system is Windows is an operating system. Mac OS is an operating system. Linux has been around for a long time, and we're here on the Wikipedia page with Tux the Penguin. And if you want to read more on this, it's a good source to start. Not always the end-all, be-all in the information about a particular topic, but it's got a lot of good information about Linux if you want to learn more about the Linux operating system. But the reason we chose it was because it's a very efficient operating system, and I'll give you a little bit of history on it. So it was created by this guy back around 1991, and it's an open source operating system, and it's based on Unix, and it's a Unix work-alike. Now Unix was an operating system that was created by Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie, and Brian Kernighan, and other people, and I actually once got to talk to Dennis Ritchie in an interview on a radio show that I did a long time ago, RadioNet, and he said it was created on three principles. Was that everything was accessed as a file, so you could access things as a file, and even a printer. So if you wanted to write to a printer, you would just open up a file and write to a file just like you would open and write to a text file, and it would print out to that printer. So that was one of the concepts. The other concept was that you could take a program and write it once and run it on any different type of hardware, because back in the day when Unix became available, you had to write different code for different hardware. There was different languages for each piece of hardware, and they wanted to be able to have an operating system where they could write an application in one code and then compile it and run it on different architectures. The other thing, which is one of the most powerful things that Linux also does as well, is being able to take the output of one program and make it the input of another program. And so in that way you can kind of chain a whole bunch of things together. And one of the philosophies of Unix as well that's carried over into Linux is you have a lot of little things that do one thing and do it well. And so which brings me to my next topic is, now that we've decided that we want to use Linux, there's lots of different Linux distributions. And since Linux is open source software, there are lots of people that have taken that free software and made their own distributions for their own purposes and released those to the world at large. And I'll talk a minute about open source. So open source software means that the source code is freely available for people to download and to use, and there are a number of different licenses. One of them is the GNU public license, but you're free to download that software and use that software, and also look at the source of that software, which is good for a lot of reasons, and I won't get into too many of those reasons. But Linux is open source, it's based on Unix, it's Unix-like, and it makes really efficient use of the hardware that you have at hand. So that being said, I could choose a different operating system like Windows to run my desktop on my boat, but then I kind of did a little bit of research, and those PCs start around $300 and get up to around $1,000, and they're what's known as a mini desktop, because as you know, if you're a boater, or if you're in an RV, space is limited, so you want something that's really small. And so there are lots of other desktops available that already have Linux pre-installed because it takes good advantage of the hardware, but most of them start at around $300, and for the amount of memory that you need, which is probably a minimum of 8 gigabytes to run a good desktop system, and you need some decent video, then we chose to use the Raspberry Pi. So all of those start around $300, so this little guy is around $75 for the high-end model. They start around $35, and the idea is we want to be able to put a coating on this to make it marine hardened and put it in a waterproof case and then be able to use this on our boat or on our RV. And then and it also has very low power consumption too. So we're talking 5 volts and 3 amps, and so that's why we've chosen Linux, and that's why I run Linux on my boat. So in one of our future videos, we're going to talk about how to get the Raspberry Pi to do Zoom meetings and how to install Ubuntu Linux. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and visit our website at skipperscott.com.